Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to do a little oral exercise, always a good thing for musicians to be able to do. And what you've got on the screen in front of you is the skeleton of a score. In other words, I'm going to play 4 bars, 4 measures of a piece of music, and most of the notes I'm playing are provided on the screen. But every time you see one of these red boxes, that's indicating a missing note. And hopefully you can see which part the notes are missing, because there's a 3-part texture. So this is a missing note in the middle part. This is a missing note in the bottom part. These are 2 missing notes in the top part and the bottom part, and then 3 missing notes in the top part at the end. So the answer to this will be gained by trying to look at what's been given to you, trying to make sense of it as you hear it, and then thinking, right, what are these missing notes? Can I hear what the note might be? Can I sing that note? Can I then work out what the pitch of it is? Can I relate that note to the previous note that was in that part and or to the note that comes after it? So anything that gives you a little bit of a clue. Can I read the chords a little bit and think, well, I think this is going to have to be this chord, so these notes must belong to that chord. Sometimes that may be more obvious than others. So if you've done this before, you'll be kind of used to doing it. If you've never done this before, it might be a bit daunting. And if you've never done it before, you might want to start by thinking about the notes in the top part. It's much easier to hear the top part than it is to hear the lower parts. So you might think, well, I'll just sort of target these 5. And then if I can get those 5, well, let's see how I get on with the other 3. Or you might be feeling confident enough to go for it altogether. So I'm going to play it several times and give you an opportunity to get used to what you're hearing and see if you can puzzle out what these missing notes are. Okay, well, we're in the key of F major, and that's our tonic chord of F major. There's a scale of F major just to get us in the right zone. And the first chord is this. So I've got A in the top part, I've got C in the middle part, F in the bass part. Okay, so that's my first chord. Okay, let me play these 4 bars, these 4 measures, and see how you get on trying to fill in those missing spaces. Now, it may be a little bit of a shock at first, so don't worry, there'll be other playings to get used to this. And of course, if you want to pause the video between playings to buy yourself a bit of extra time, that's perfectly in order. Here's the second playing. There's the F major chord. Here's the first chord. Here we go. Pause the video if you want more time. Okay, playing number 3. Here's the F major chord. Here's the first chord. Again, pause the video if you want to. Here's the next playing. F major, the first chord. Pause the video if you want to. Okay, one last playing, but of course if you want to rewind and replay it and a few more times, that's perfectly in order. Here's the F major chord and the first chord. Well, I wonder how you're getting on with this. Now, don't feel at all defeated if you're thinking, I haven't got anything at all after those playings. If this is something new to you, it takes time to kind of get in the groove with it. And as I say, you're trying to listen to the top line thinking, well, can I get a clue from the note before a missing note or the note after a missing note? Can I hear an interval? Can I hear a leap? Or can I hear that something's going by step? Can I do the same for those other two parts? Can I read the chords? What did I hear? Did I hear something that was kind of inside the key comfortably? Or did I hear a note that sounded as if it didn't quite belong to the key? Well, what could that be? So you can continue to kind of tussle with it, partly by working with it orally, but also by kind of thinking through what your reasonable options might be. And what I'm now going to do is to reveal the answer. So if you're not ready to see the answer yet, pause at this point, keep rewinding and having an extra go or three if you want to. When you're ready for the answer to be revealed, play on from now. This is the answer. Let me play it to you again. Okay, so let's work through that. So from the beginning, we obviously had these first notes, and then this middle part was on a C, and then it just moved up a semitone to C sharp or a half step to C sharp, and then it moves up another half step or another semitone to D. So the trick there was to try and hear that chromatic movement. C, C sharp, D. And you may have heard that C sharp didn't feel as if it belonged to the key of F major. So what was going on there? Well, it's kind of hinting at D minor, isn't it? There's a chord 7 in first inversion going to chord 1 in D minor. Okay, looking at the second bar, the second measure, let's see if we can find that next missing note. It was in the bass line, wasn't it? Now, you might have heard that going down by step. D, C, B. And you might then have heard, well, that B doesn't sound like a B flat, which would be what we'd expect in the key signature. D, C, B flat. It's something else, isn't it? D, C, B natural. So it's some kind of chromatic alteration, or you might think it's the note that sounds a little bit higher than I was expecting it to be. But if it's going down by step, D, C, B, it's obviously going to be something. D, C, B, and then it goes on to C. So it's all by step, isn't it? D, C, B, C. And then, of course, the next note was this B flat. So you think, oh, was it the same? Was it B flat twice? Did it go D, C, B flat, C, B flat? No, it didn't. It went D, C, B natural, C, B flat. So that was a little bit of a clue as to, wonder why that was a B natural. Okay, let's move on. Here's the third bar, the third measure. These two missing notes in the top part, C and A. And they have a rhythm as well. Dotted crotchet quaver or dotted quarter note, eighth note. How could you have got these pictures? Well, there's an octave, isn't there, between this C and this C. So hearing an octave leap might have been quite useful. You might also have looked at this chord and thought, well, it looks like a chord 1 in F major. We've got an F and we've got an A. The missing note in that chord is C, and that's what we're getting upstairs, C, and then it comes down to A. And you might just hear it's sort of skipping down. It's missing out one note, or it's falling a third. So that's how you might have got those. Going on to the last bar, the last measure, well, what about this in the bass? Because if I play the music from here, you can hear this. Well, first of all, there's a bit of a leap in the bass. A, D, G. So it's got a, can you hear that falling fifth? Because that might have been your clue to securing that one. The other thing is, you might have heard this chord and thought, that's a minor chord. So then you could think, we're in a major key. Which are the minor chords in a major key? Well, chord 2 is a minor chord, and that's what this is. So if you hear that, it's definitely a minor chord. And if you hear the bass going bom, 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 well, that's a kind of very typical cadence where you go 2, 5, 1. And also you might have heard, well, rising fourth. And you might have heard the last note was F, and the note that we've got circled was one above it. G, F, G, C, F. So linking things to other notes, always useful. Then what about these last 3 notes in the top part? So from the beginning of the last bar, we had this. Well, you might have heard B flat down a 6. That might have been one way of doing it. You might have heard the last note was F. And then you might have thought, well, the note before it was 1 below F, and the note before that was 1 below that. So you can kind of sometimes work backwards and think, well, if the last note's F, the last 3 notes must be D, E, F. Or you might have heard that falling 6. And when you hear this chord, there's just that slight dissonance about it, isn't there? So you might think, well, I wonder what this cadence is. It could be a 5, 1, a 5-7 chord going to 1, and that D has just got in the way of it a little bit before it goes to E, and the chord sounds a bit more consonant into F. So that D is there because it's an extension of chord 5. It's a 5-9, so you might have even heard a 5-9, and then it becomes a 5-7 and then a 1. So that's what the changes or the missing notes were, and those were different means of being able to hear that. So I hope you found that exercise useful. Many people have to do this kind of thing as some kind of exercise for music exams. Whether you're doing music exams or not doesn't matter at all, because anything that you can do that's going to develop your aural ability to hear things is really useful. And say you were playing this piece of music on the piano, for example, if you can look at the piece and just by looking at the notes, you can begin to hear what it's supposed to sound like. That makes you a more confident sight reader, makes you a more confident learner of music. And you're not sitting there thinking, have I got this right? Or am I doing something wrong? You develop that confidence that's needed. So a very useful musical skill to acquire. Well, if you've been intrigued by this video and you're thinking, oh, do you know what? I need to do more of this. Music Matters is here to help you. www.mmcourses.co.uk. When you get to the home page, click on courses and scroll down until you find the oral dictation course. It all sounds a bit dry, I know, but it's lots of practice in doing this kind of stuff with lots more kind of technique and explanation of how you go about doing this task. So if this is something you struggle with, or a skill you'd like to acquire, or a skill you'd like to improve, have a look at the oral dictation course. There are oral test courses for each of the 8 grades there as well, so you might find those helpful. Lots of other courses there as well. www.mmcourses.co.uk.